Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Headline from The Guardian, an article by a John Gans, who is writing, it's an opinion article. The headline is the free speech debate raging because intellectuals feel stripped of power? It's a fantastic hook. It's a very good headline. It's an important headline. Unfortunately, Mr. Gans pretty much uses that headline as a hook for an article that is using the cancel culture debate as a framework for bitching about federal police enforcement and protesters getting arrested and stuff like that. The article really just isn't very good. Now, Mr. Gans is a writer living in Brooklyn and an executive editor at Genius. And this is in the byline. I'm not doxing or anything. This is one of those things that is actually very important here. This is a man who is part of the New York publishing world, the East Coast journalism world, intellectual circles. And that's a very narrow, small place. So remember that, because his article is very provincial. If you read that, just remember that. But once again, let's go back to the actual headline. Is the free speech debate raging because intellectuals feel stripped of power? I would argue yes, and that's really important, and it's a really broad topic, and it goes all the way back for me to mid-September 2001. Right after 9/11 was my birthday, and right after that I was discussing on IRC, an old chat network, with someone about my frustration because I am what's called RE3P. I'm a disabled veteran, and in order for me to re-enlist at that time, we would have basically had to have a nuclear war. It's possible to go back in, but it requires some really exceptional circumstances or an exceptional need, and while I'm smart and I was good, I wasn't that exceptional, okay? Just a guy. Now, when I was in the military, I was in the Gulf. I did the Gulf War thing. I did most of my time in the Gulf War doing the Red Sea blockade and intelligence surrounding that. Okay, I did not gather intelligence. I analyzed, reported, briefed, did message traffic. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing exciting. It's actually really boring. But I have a little bit of knowledge of what's going on, and by mid-September 2001, we knew roughly what we were dealing with, and I could identify what was going to happen, what was going to need to happen to prosecute a war, and I was very frustrated that I didn't get to go. I was angry. I wanted to see the people responsible for these attacks identified, punished, and removed from the board forever. And I was told that my opinion was bad. I was very jingoistic and very shallow, and that I had no reason for my opinion, that I had no basis for my opinion, that I didn't understand what I was talking about. Despite several years of experience with Middle Eastern studies at a level that you don't actually usually get in university, This was what was told to me, and this was told to me by a person who presented themselves as an intellectual. He had a degree, and the degree wasn't in Middle Eastern studies, but it was a humanities degree. And he knew what was right, and I needed to shut up because I was just a commoner. He didn't say it that way. He said that I was uneducated and my experience wasn't relevant, and all the basic things. Very elitist, very much the intellectual speaking down to me, which is hilarious in other contexts. I tracked this. It was sort of a wake-up moment. At that time, I was becoming very involved in some of the pseudo-libertarian, not hard libertarian, not ANCAP, but pseudo-libertarian, the freedomist, the liberty faction of the internet. Information wants to be free. And So this really got to me. We were talking about the democratization of information, and that was a big topic right then. And fast forward a little bit, 2013. I'm still paying attention to this. I think it was 2013, might have been 2011. Dianne Feinstein introduces a bill that didn't go anywhere, but it was supported relatively quietly, but relatively firmly by the journalist intellectual elites. And this was a bill to regulate journalism, to regulate the First Amendment protections to a licensed professional journalist class. Whoa! Back up there, all right? That's just that. It's amazing. But she didn't like embedded bloggers. She didn't like conservative voices on the internet. She didn't like people reporting what they saw the way that they saw it, with their own interpretation of reality. And it continues on now. It got really bad again in 2015, and it's really bad now. And this is the free speech debate. Right now it's framed in terms of inherent patriarchy, white supremacy, privilege. Free speech is white privilege. That's actually something that people say. And microaggressions and hate speech, and none of that really matters. The core to this is actually in this headline. Is the free speech debate raging because intellectuals feel stripped of power? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. It doesn't matter whether you define intellectuals academically or journalistically or politically or in terms of social work, because they're all kind of mashed together, all right? A lot of the journalists that you have right now are actually academic intellectuals who have gone out into journalism as a means of ideological activism, not as journalism, but as ideological activism. This is self-evident, it's provable, go figure it out, all right? Not going to spend an extra 2 hours on the video showing you this. Like, there was an article today in the Washington Post that made a claim that gun sales tracked with racism while increasing crime based on Google searches that involved the N-word. And I'm just like, talk about ivory tower intellectuals. Did you expect to not be challenged on this? Because, whoa, that's bogus. That's like 7th grade students should be able to tear you a new butthole on this one. Anyway, intellectual elites, and whether you describe them as academic, political, or journalistic, I think they all kind of mesh together. And you're dealing with the New York and East Coast publishing world and journalism world, which is, it's 99.8% progressive. And I'm not making that up. The number of conservatives in New York publishing is so few, you can literally count them on one hand as outliers. It's a very, very specific world. And this flows into your journalism, and it meshes with the academy. And these are intellectuals. Do they feel stripped of power? Well, yes, because they have been stripped of power. These are the people who, for a very long time, have told you what to think and how to think and what you see. They observe the news or observe events. They report on those events. They interpret those events. They provide you with their interpretation of events as reality. They interpret reality for you. They are very uncomfortable with the idea that everyone can go out with a camera or with just their eyeballs, with a notepad, record, observe, interpret, and report on reality. They have been stripped of their gatekeeping power, and they are very, very raging. They feel powerless. They feel stripped of special rights, special abilities. And rightly so. They have been. Like, this isn't a bad thing, though. They have been stripped of that ability to be the gatekeepers of reality. And that is the core element of the free speech debate. I want you to ignore all of the distractors. The hate speech this, the patriarchy that, the free speech is white supremacy, walking your dog is white supremacy, whatever. All of that, ignore it. The real key to the free speech debate is about who gets to interpret and define your reality for you. Do you want it to be you, or do you want it to be a gatekeeper who has power simply by virtue of position? It's a question, but it's a really important one when you look at where you stand in this debate. Once again, the headline: is the free speech debate raging because intellectuals feel stripped of power? Yes. And I know what side I'm on. Stay sideways.